been a little break.
Yeah.
Been a bit... I missed you.
I missed you too. There's so much that we haven't chatted about that I'm actually a bit nervous about how this is going to go. It's like 2 hours later.
I know. Yeah. Yeah. The upload time to YouTube could be interesting on this one, but we won't.
No. Timer's on.
Season 4, episode 6. But yeah, a month ago, but it's been a crazy month, right? What have you been up to?
I've been loving sport and I'm sure you have some highlights that you'll share, but I've loved, there's the obvious Euros, being a football mad person that I am now, wearing the jersey, cheering on the women. So there's a whole other angle there. But then to go into Commonwealths, to go into some World Cups that we're on, looking at the aquatics today, I've just loved it. I've loved that every time I wanted to turn on the TV, there was something on. Like there's obviously the other stuff before the WNBA of playoffs and other bits and pieces, but to have stuff home, close to home here, and people talking about it at work that isn't just football, or when it was football, to be talking about the women's football first name basis for all the players, coaching, tactics and all stuff like that. Yeah, really cool, really cool.
What has surprised you the most from all of those different sporting things that have gone on? What has surprised you the most?
Okay. 2 things. The first one was, 3 things. Can I have 3 if I'm really quick?
I mean, 2 was a push.
Sorry. Okay. So, okay. If I stay on football, the first one was, I was surprised on both sides at some people who I didn't think would be engaged in women's football were messaging and chatting and saying, oh my gosh, have you watched this? Isn't it amazing? We're glued to this. We're buying jerseys all over the world, like some in North America, some in Ireland and the UK. And then the other side of it was that some people weren't watching it. Some people in my own environment where I'd say, oh, did you see, the game last night? Yeah, so half of it. And I thought, oh, that's a little bit of a reality check on me maybe running away with myself. The other side of things was that I thought was amazing, or that surprised me a little bit, is the non-football hat on me, is that a lot of what people were getting excited about with the women's Euros was already after happening in another sport, or other sports that maybe didn't have as much backing and televised support and media. So I kind of felt for some of those sports who were really successful, or have been on World Cups or various platforms and had great success, but still in the shadows a little bit. Now, I do hope that they can feed into each other. And the final thing I'll say is, and again, this is a positive and a negative, the Serena, when they interviewed, a load of different snippets came out of the interview, nothing was groundbreaking. And so I was hoping that was a segue for some people who could maybe marry up the success with what she was saying. We're saying, oh, that's not a million miles away from what I can do. But I kind of got the same feel when it was around Gareth saying, people interviewing Gareth Southgate saying, oh, he's just about the person. And I'm like, but we've been banging on about that for 20 years. So do we just need to have people who have the medal success to then go, now I'm going to try it because they said they were going to do it? So those are the things that kind of surprised me, but interest me. Yeah, excited me as well.
Nice.
I was tight, wasn't I? Tell me about your highlights, please, because I know you've had an interesting summer.
Yeah, quite a bit of Commonwealth Games, visits to Birmingham were back, and Lioness and stuff was cool. I guess the one thing, and as per usual, I hadn't planned to ask you that question, and then I knew that you would bounce it back this way, and one of the things that surprised me was, so I was at the women's hockey final at the Commonwealth Games, and because wife working with the team, so we sat with the friends and family section of the players, so it was mostly their parents. Okay, so we still have this fascination that in sport we assume that they get to 18 and then we don't have anything to do with their parents anymore because they've gone past 18. They're now officially an adult. we've moved on from the safeguarding stuff and let's forget about the parents. But being in amongst the parents, you know, how proud they were and how much it meant to them to be there for their daughter's Commonwealth Games final, and what they felt was fascinating, and you could see it like oozing out of them. What you could also see was how little they've learned about sport, and there was 3 people sat behind me and my son. One was a sister and 2 were parents, and there was a lot of negativity. Oh, wrong pass. She shouldn't have done that. She needs to do this. Stop playing aerial balls. Stop playing aerial balls. Stop playing aerial balls. And I'm sat there, right? And I know very little about hockey. My hockey knowledge has been accelerated in the last 18 months because I never played it or anything but it's an invasion game, and the principles of play would be relatively similar, albeit the intricacies of the tactics are a bit different. And I watched Australia set up, and they set up 1-3-3-3, very high numbers up the pitch, which instantly said to me they're going to press high. They might have noticed that we're not great playing out from the back. They'll get numbers up the pitch. They'll try and win the ball high up and attack quick. But actually what the players were doing was aerial passes and playing past that initial press. So 6 players attack, aerial pass, clear those 6 players, and all of a sudden you're into their back line, right?
Yeah.
Which in my head, I'm like, yeah, absolutely makes sense. But these 3 behind me were, oh my days, were just so draining and negative. Everything was the wrong pass. Stop playing aerial passes. And at half time, I'd had enough. And I turned around and said, what I think is really interesting about what's going on now is sometimes the aerial pass is the right pass, but technically they just didn't execute it perfectly and it goes a little bit wrong. But it still might have been the right pass. And there was a bit of, no, fair. And I said, but also what you don't know is what the head coach has asked them to be doing. Part of their tactic could have been, we expect Australia to press high, therefore our counter tactic is to play past that first line of press and then we're off and we're away. To which it was, oh yeah, we've never thought about that. And I found it really interesting that as a parent, like they hadn't even considered everything, but they were just so negative. Wow. Getting it wrong, you're getting it wrong. Like, oh, well, you didn't say too much when we went 2-0 up against one of the best teams in the world. But in the second half, they were a lot quieter. And it turned out, I was chatting to Katie, the assistant coach, after the game. And I said, I kind of recounted this moment. And she said, fascinating that you noticed that, because going aerial was a key tactic for us today. We wanted to do that because we'd highlighted this, and this.
Yeah.
But people are very quick. And I think it goes to any spectators of sport, right? We make an assumption based upon what the players should be doing without knowing what they've been asked to try and do. Mm-hmm. And we really quickly jump to that. And I think I've probably been guilty of it for a long time. And I was asked to do something yesterday for the Coach's Voice to talk about some tactical stuff in a game. But all I'm thinking now, I'm just guessing. Because I've got no idea what they've been asked to do and therefore whether they're implementing it or not.
Yeah. And then that's so fascinating. If you layer on that, say you were the person being negative, if you layer on that your hockey knowledge or lack of it, the gain that you've had over the 18 months, and then say you've only had X amount of experience maybe playing county, or if you did play international or local, that's essentially what the spectators bringing to the floor. And then the maybe, I don't know, the conformity or the culture that's growing in the people around them, that they'll fit in by latching on and agreeing with, yeah, that's an awful pass, or I need to be a little bit more vocal, and, you know, this is how I should present myself. It's fascinating, isn't it? And even if it's both of us in the sports that we know and love so well, like if I went to a basketball match, I still, in all the experience I have, would only have my lens and say, oh, I should do this, when really it might be that girl, I could say her timing's really poor on a backdoor cut, but she is making the run to create space for the next person to come through. It could be a new style, it could be a new tactic. Yeah, and I'm rippling into the crowd. And what if some people respect my opinion are now hearing that and they're going, well, yeah, I agree with what Jen said. Like, the way they're doing that's ridiculous. Such a waste of her talent. Ripple, ripple. So that's a really, really good observation. I wonder if people can catch themselves in or out on that when they're watching in future.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was moments in the game when, and I think I see it in coaches, and that catch yourself in or out I think is a good one for this one, because it's a spectators thing, right? Like they were directing play, pass it left, and they're shouting. But I'm thinking, like, play's 100 yards from you, right? With the greatest will in the world, they cannot hear you.
Yeah.
So who are you shouting for? Like for what? Is it to make yourself feel better? Mm-hmm. To feel part of the experience, which is cool, and like, you know, they're all totally really valid reasons. But I just found it really interesting. Is like, they can't hear you, yeah. And the moment, by the time that sound has travelled from there down to there, even if they could, they've made a decision. The ball's gone. Yeah,
yeah, that's
and. Cool. They would be like this, blinkered, what's my decision making? It wouldn't be taken in that sound. You know, the amount of times we see players on pitches or athletes in team sports, they're getting shouted at with a bit of information from 5-10 yards away, and they can't hear it.
Mm-mm. No, you know, no.
People telling you to turn and you don't hear it. And you go, how did I not hear that? You're 10 yards away.
Yeah.
But you filtered it.
Interesting. Yeah. And then I guess, yeah, whatever sport it is, and the volume, whether in a stadium or a small location, it's that ability to filter it out and then to problem solve. I found, what I'm thinking of as I'm speaking is a time I went to Lee Valley, and I went up with Doug MacDonald. We were watching a Scottish coach take a session with the national team, and it was coming up to a competition, and he probably spoke in the hour session maybe 50 words max. So 6 athletes doing runs with the gates, the kinesthetic feedback of the water. They were able to kind of pull in every so often, have a peer chat. How'd you find that? What's going on? He would give the timings out. No critique, no nothing. Now, I know there's layers and layers that we could go into there, but that was another time, along with the world of shooting, when I explored that the silence was golden. The silence showed me and made me think of so much more, that as soon as the bank had filled up with people who were coming to watch them, the volume would come up, but then the session had no noise. So how were they handling, or how were they adapting their ability to kind of tune in if they needed to use the crowd to hype them up? Or in certain states of flow, are they not hearing anybody anyway? They're feeling and listening to their own voice, you know?
Yeah.
So interesting. I am seeing that in football this year. Different players that we have, new players in, are very vocal. And what's happening, and I'm hoping to get some clips and work on the players with my team, is they're like, I'm here, here, and then the ball comes and they're not here, or they've overheard it and the defender's in, and then they're fumbling, and then they're like, oh, and then there's a ripple of 3 seconds before they refocus. So there's a whole string of things, and the person on the ball hasn't probably made the best decision if she's not experienced enough to block out the here, the here from the sideline, the here from here.
Yeah.
You know, there's like 6 heres, and I'm like, and then there's the crowd, you know. So yeah, it's interesting. I wonder if there's people from different sports, like what's that instruction, direction, nudge, cue, what's that like? I know we spoke about behaviors a few times, but what are those words that you're using in training, or the supporters that support? How are you working towards the distractions? I guess I'm thinking of the Arsenal documentary when he put the music on the sideline to try and distract them during the training session, or not distract them, but prepare them. But anyway, I digress. Yes, very interesting topic for people listening to.
Timing of communication, isn't it, really? I think that's so how. Yeah, I think it's an interesting one for coaches to reflect on their own sport and think of when is a good time to communicate, forget the what bit, that's an entirely different thing. I used to do some work with a swimming coach who regularly communicated to the athletes when they were underwater, which I couldn't really follow as to why.
Mm-hmm.
And just the pure timing of it. It was the what bit was, it's probably really good information, but it's not very useful if they can't hear you.
Yeah. And stay with swimming. When I went to British Champs there a couple of years ago, the noise, the flick, I guess you could call them cues in certain ways when somebody's, breathing in a freestyle or breaststroke and their head comes up or fly and they're giving the little flick of their wrist to beckon them on, or they have a yip, a distinctive noise that the coach and the athlete relate to. And I remember there was 5 coaches I was working with up there at the time. It's why I went up. Very interesting to watch the different noises, who needs what, and how often they reevaluate them. And then speaking of timing, we had this conversation the other day. We did a boundaries session with our staff and players at West Ham, and we were talking in that session about your perception of the right time and the athletes, similar to the underwater. They've just done something, up and down, whatever, 10 100s, they're getting onto the 8, there's time on the clock, they're on the clock before they get their break and go. And instead of a small little nugget, the minute they come and touch and they're breathing really heavy, they're trying to focus, they've looked at the time, they're happy or not with the time, they're trying to gauge how many seconds before they leave the wall again or push off. There may be other people in the lane, and the coach is like, because they're ready, they've seen something. And we spoke about, say, post game, like they've played, there's a result, there's fans, there's evaluations of performance, there's emotions, there's expectations, of the next week or the next upcoming game and what all of that. Is that the right time to go and speak to somebody? What do you hope to get out of it, etc.?
What do you think a coach should look for to show that an athlete or player is ready to hear them? And I apologize for that question, because I've just landed that on you, because we're not even talking about the normal stuff.
We're back.
Yeah.
Brilliant question.
Yeah.
That is a brilliant question. So let's go back to what we've spoke about before in the basics. The individual. So what are you noticing on a session by session basis, or however often you interact with them? Is it a necessity for some people to write what they've noticed down? I would say absolutely, in order to get familiar, depending on how busy your life is. Again, let's link it to that boundaries thing I talked about. We did an exercise where people were dotted around in different spaces, and then we would walk towards each other and in different groups, depending who we're paired or grouped up with. And people would start to notice what the other person was doing. Would they move their hands? Would their heads drop? Would they start to make jokes and get giggly? Would they be then able to convey or put their hand up and go, oh, I'm very present in the moment, but I feel something. And that's what I'm connecting with, is if we're in track cycling and you've just finished a piece, you're coming down, I'm ready to bring that group off, like I'm the coach. If you make eye contact with me, if you keep a distance, if you're talking to somebody else, I would be saying to myself as a coach, if I make a comment here to Nick, what do I want to get out of it? And how much time have I given you to evaluate that when we talk about reflection in action? And how much time do we have in our break before we go back in? Is it something that we can correct that you've noticed? Do I need to know how you've processed it? Is that important? Or am I going in with an instruction? So I'd be noticing kind of the physical body language that I'm getting. And I use that loosely because I'd need to know what your baselines are. But I think it's pretty easy. There I said, I mean, it's not really, but I think it's pretty easy if I'm coming towards you and there's a smile on your face and your head is up and you're coming towards me and we have a good enough relationship, I might be ready to hold the silence and let them speak first. Or I might go, are you okay? And then see where that ripples from. Any thoughts on that? Instead of the generic good job or...
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts? I rambled there a bit now on that, but that's a great question.
Yeah, I don't know. I think reading some of those cues and triggers are important. I think sometimes the sport may dictate those moments. So if you have a timeout or a quarter time, does that moment then become something? But I think it's got to then be agreed between the coach and the athlete or athletes. So, for example, so if you looked at boxing, in the middle of a round, I don't know how much could probably be heard by a boxer. And if so, what is it that they need to hear? Is it one word, 2 words? When do they need that information? I would think they're probably trying to process quite a lot of other things at that stage, like not get hit in the face would be like pretty high on the list.
Protect me.
Yeah. So then you've got a post-round minute. So how do you use that? What does the boxer want in that, in terms of the time of that? Do they want the first 30 seconds just to try and get some oxygen and water, make themselves look a bit prettier, and then they can have like 30 seconds of something?
Yeah.
But there's a timing bit to even that structure of that minute, I think, isn't there, really?
Yeah.
But then and a lot of coaches in younger age group and team sports may have kind of roll on, roll off substitutes. So does the coach just focus on the game, or is it pre-planned in some kind of way that, like, let the kids play, we will then have a conversation as you've come off the pitch, once you're back in the right place, and the coach spends more time with the kids that are off the pitch based upon performance, rather than trying to influence performance because it's, good for their own ego if the team wins or whatever. But I don't know. I think it's definitely worth coaches deconstructing the timing of communication and in a way that's relevant for their sport.
Yeah. And the vital question that you said in there, what does the boxer want? And if people were asking that question, wouldn't it be amazing if someone come back and said, I'm willing, eager, definitely want feedback, or definitely want to have a conversation, but in this 10 minutes, I just need me. Or the boxer, I can't breathe, I'm all over the place, you come at me, give me small little things, I trust you, I trust the team around me. Once I get my water and my Vaseline and whatever, tidy myself, then if there's something you're saying that I'm confused about, then I can come in at that point. And we spoke endlessly about, say, halftime in the football world. We're getting there, we're getting better. But even a moment popped in where 2 players had a conversation on the pitch last year in the first half. One tried to solve it themselves, as did the other. They then came together. The pace of the game didn't give them time to solve it together. They parked it, brought it in at halftime. And because we'd worked on the halftime scenario, the player had time to go, I need this. I don't want the questions. I don't want me to explore. I just need this, and I need it from this person, and I need also a video clip to show me. And that kind of honesty in a different way was really good, because they tried to go through it a couple of different avenues. Equally, she's not a person who wants to be confronted after a game. She's quite hard on herself, and she'll do the fan bit and have the chats in the dressing room. And then the Monday, even if others are off, she'll be ready to sit down and go, right, okay, here's what, can we have a chat and be as honest as you need to. And sorry, one other thing I'm thinking, let's swip to the coach developer conversation. A lot of the times when I went to watch people, observe and share and co-create in the environment, that's how we set it up. But because there was some coaches who'd not had a lot of support, we still had the car park conversation. What do you think of that? And I'd be very mindful, because they haven't had someone in, they could be nervous about a camera, the mic is a new thing. All that aside, they just wanted to know how I'm getting on. And they'd know clearly that I wasn't an expert in any of their sports, but yet they'd still like, was that all right? And I'd be very mindful of how I returned that. I really enjoyed that. I noticed this. Not it was good or it was bad, but the timing of those things. Yeah. Look at us.
Speaking of timing, not a thing about emotional management or transitions.
Oh, yay, we're back. Oh, cool. Okay, now let me see if I can remember. At Coach Convo, that's our Twitter. It's going to be lighting up with this new episode. coachconversation@gmail.com. We've had 2 emails in the last week that we have brought these topics that we're supposed to talk about today, but we'll get to them in the next episode. And we still have to do your storytelling one. Let's
Oh, I forgot what that was now.
I'll make a list. Thanks for joining us. We will see you next week and hope you've enjoyed the episode. Bye.
Bye.